And how long was it after you took that decision that you first came in contact with Freud?
Oh, that was at the end of my studies, and then it took quite a while until I met Freud. You see, I finished my studies in 1900, and I met Freud only very much later. I read, in 1900, I already read his dream interpretation and where Freud studies about hysteria, but that was merely literary, And then in 1907, I became acquainted with him personally.
Will you tell me how that happened? Did you go to Vienna?
Oh, well, I'd written a book about the psychology of dementia precox, called Schizophrenia then. And I sent him that book, and thus became acquainted. I went to Vienna for a fortnight then, and then we had very long and penetrating conversations.
Oh, well, I just paid a visit to him in Vienna, and then we talked for 13 hours without interruption.
13 hours
for 13 hours without interruption. We didn't realize that we were almost dead at the end of it, but it was tremendously interesting. He was the old man and had a great experience, and he was, of course, way ahead of me, and so I settled down to learn something first.
It soon developed into a personal friendship.
And what sort of man was Freud?
Well, he was a complicated nature, I liked him very much, but I soon discovered that when he had thought something, then it was settled, while I was doubting all along the line. And it was impossible to discuss something really of fun. He had no philosophical education, particularly, I was studying Kant, and I was steeped in it, and that was far from Freud. So from the very beginning, there was a discrepancy.
On one occasion, Jung was having a conversation with Freud about parapsychology. Freud, in his materialism, rejected most of Jung's questions as nonsensical. Jung had a strange sensation, as if his diaphragm were made of iron and becoming red hot. At that moment, there was a loud noise in the bookcase next to them. Both stood up in alarm, fearing it was going to topple over. Jung told him, "There, that is an example of so-called catalytic exteriorization phenomenon." Freud replied that it was sheer bosh. Jung insisted it was not, and predicted that in a moment there would be another such loud noise. Indeed, another detonation went off in the bookcase. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Carl Jung wrote, "To this day, I do not know what gave me this certainty, but I knew beyond all doubt that the report would come again. Freud only stared aghast at me. I do not know what was in his mind or what his look meant."
Well, now, can we move on to the time when you did eventually part company with Freud? It was partly, I think, with the publication of your book, The Psychology of the Unconscious. Is that correct?
That was the real course.
Well, now, before you...
Oh, I mean the final course, because it had a long preparation. From the beginning, I had a reservatio mentalis. I couldn't agree with quite a number of his ideas.
Which ones in particular?
Well, chiefly his purely personal approach and his disregard of the historical conditions of man. You see, we depend largely upon our history. We are shaped through education, through the influence of the parents, which are by no means always personal. They were prejudiced or they were influenced by historical ideas or what I call dominance. And that is a most decisive factor in psychology. And we are not of today or of yesterday. We are of an immense age. I had written that book
that cost me my friendship with Freud because he couldn't accept it.
Yes.
To him, the unconscious was a product of consciousness.
Yes.
And it simply contained the remnants. I mean, it was sort of storeroom where all the discarded things of consciousness were heaped up and left. But to me, the unconscious then was already a matrix, a sort of basis of consciousness of a creative nature, namely capable of autonomous acts.
Well, in the transference, which is an expression which Jung took actually over from Freud, and Freud thought it was purely a projection of the parental image onto the partner and so on, and an Oedipal or Electra complex projected. That's why at the end of a Freudian therapy, you cut off, goodbye, we have never known each other. Projections are handed back and goodbye. While we think, certainly in the beginning stages of relationship, there is generally a lot of projection mixed up with it. You see, the developments of time have made that Freudianism has so much won out in the world, and is taught at every university, in every school, and you have Freudians in every clinic nowadays and so on, that you can say people are beginning to be a bit sick of it. I mean, it's become self-evident. I mean, there is a certain truth in what Freud has found, and that is now self-evident. Everybody knows that one can have repressed sex and the Oedipus complex. That's now become common knowledge. So now the development goes to discover Jung, because he's still new to the masses, to the majority of intellectuals and so on. And the Freudians feel the losers. They feel they are begin to bore people, to not being anymore on top. And so they keep up that libel quite artificially for professional reasons, you could even say. And then there is another aspect, namely fear. You see, there are many people who are terrified of the unconscious. And as Jung is a kind of advertiser of relating to the unconscious, you have to find something to shout him down.
Now, this is it. This is the vision of my patient.
But how could you be sure that your patient wasn't unconsciously recalling something that somebody had told him?
Oh, no, quite out of question, because that thing was not known. It was in a magic papyrus in Paris, and it wasn't even published. It was only published 4 years later after I had observed it with my patient.
And this you felt proved that there was an unconscious, which was something more than personal.
Oh, well, that was not a proof to me, but it was a hint. And I took the hint.
Yes.
Recognize that personal unexplained experiences can be meaningful and warrant exploration rather than dismissal. Unexplainable events can be catalysts for profound personal and psychological discovery.